Welcome, everyone, once again to the first episode of ITSS Verona, a podcast series. This time, we have the first issue on crime, extremism, and terrorism. And once again, after having Professor Schultz from Stanford University, we have the incredible pleasure, the treat of having arguably the most important academic and expert in the world on terrorism and counterterrorism. Please, everyone, welcome Dr. and Professor Boaz Ganor from Israel. Dr. Shalom, Toda Rabba, welcome, and thank you so much for being here with us.
Shalom, Miki and Zeno. Thank you for having me on your show.
Dr. Ganor is the author of many articles and books on terrorism and counterterrorism. He's a worldwide recognized expert. And not just that, he is the founder and the executive director of the International Institute for Counterterrorism, which is probably the most important think tank in the world, talking about terrorism and counterterrorism. And on top of that, I want everybody to know that not only is Dr. Ganor my inspiration, my source of inspiration, my mentor, but he's probably the main reason for which I have decided to start studying terrorism and counterterrorism. So once again, Dr. Ganor, I cannot tell you how honored we are to have you here, especially.
I think we should stop the interview here because from here it can only go downward. So thank you very much.
Fair enough. So listen, Dr. Ganor, now I'm going to hand it over very quickly to Dr. Leoni, who will start the conversation, and I'm pretty sure that it's going to be very, very interesting. Thank you
very much, Mickey.
Thank you very much, Michele. Welcome, everyone, and welcome to Professor Ganor again. I just wanted to ask you a very open question. Given the current international situation, what is the state of terrorism nowadays, globally?
Well, we saw a certain kind of decline of the number of terrorist attacks, especially in Western countries, especially in countries that suffer from coronavirus. We didn't see this decline in, say, African countries and other places that doesn't have many people which are ill. But having said that, we are living in a very interesting time. I'm using the Chinese curse of may you live in interesting time. We are living in a very interesting time, which is a time of transformation. It's a transformation of actually maybe the Western way of life. It's a transformation of everything we knew about global connections, international corporations, and so on and so forth. And it would probably also impact the phenomenon of terrorism in the near future, maybe even further than that. We see already terrorist organizations from both ends of the scale. I'm talking about extreme right-wing terrorism on one hand and extreme Islamist fundamentalists like ISIS followers and Al-Qaeda followers. Both are interested in this phenomenon, which is called the coronavirus. And I expect that in the future, they would try to be more alluded to the possibility of conducting bioterrorist attacks. So the threat of bioterrorism, I think, is growing as an outcome of this pandemic globally.
Dr. Ganor, given what you just said, are there any similarities between counterterrorism and how we deal with the current COVID pandemic?
Thank you for asking this question, but with your permission, I would go one step to a previous question, which is, what is the common denominators between those two phenomena? And I would argue that there are many common denominators. We are talking about a global phenomenon, a global pandemic, if I may say so, the corona pandemic and the global terrorism pandemic. And why do I refer to that as pandemic? Because this is a cross-border phenomenon, because it's contagious phenomenon, because incitement for terrorism is contagious like the coronavirus, move from one country to another country, from one person to another person, and it's contagious in exponential way, as we saw it in the recent decades globally, we see the coronavirus in the same manner. Furthermore, the two phenomena creates a lot of fear and anxiety. Terrorism is all about terrorizing. Coronavirus terrorized everybody. And both of them are threatening the governmental systems, the governmental stability. In coronavirus, the danger is that the health systems would collapse. Terrorism is trying to create this deterioration of the governance stability in every country that they attack. So there are many common denominators, and I would add to that, of course, the economical impact. Terrorism is causing a lot of economical damage, and we see now what is the outcome of the coronavirus, at least the first wave of the coronavirus globally. So I see many common denominators and similarities between the two phenomena. And that actually gives us the ability to try to analyze and compare the countermeasures in coronavirus on one hand and the countermeasures in counterterrorism. And the first thing that popped to my mind is something that I wrote a lot in my books and articles. I call it the democratic dilemma in counterterrorism. Now, what is the democratic dilemma in counterterrorism? Is how do you find a balance between efficiency in counterterrorism and guarding liberal democratic values at the same time? And like it or not, there is a contradiction between the two, especially when you have a high intensity of terrorism. The same thing we see in coronavirus. Going back to the democratic dilemma in counterterrorism, it intensifies when you have concrete threat to the life of the people. When terrorism is threatening the life of many people, you are looking for any possible measure to protect the lives of the people. And then questions of surveillance, questions of wiretapping, sometimes even interrogations, and so on and so forth are being raised. And on the other side, you are weighing those measures in reference to the level of threat which is being posed to the lives of many people altogether. The same thing we see in countering coronavirus. Questions of privacy, of surveillance of the people, of the lockdown, and so on and so forth. Furthermore, the importance of communities. When you're talking about CVE, countering violent extremism, when you talk about counterterrorism, you understand that you need the cooperation of many communities which those bad seeds are coming from. The same thing is happening when you're talking about countering coronavirus. In Israel, we had a problem with the ultra-Orthodox Jewish Haredics communities. They suffered much more from this virus than the secular Jews, for example. So you need to work with the lay leaders, with the community, how to deal with this specific problem. Intelligence, so crucial in counterterrorism. You cannot counter the coronavirus without the intelligence, which are the checking, the medical checking that you are conducting. Checks and balances. Since you are using those problematic measures to contend with the phenomenon, you need to develop the checks and balances in order to see that you are not deteriorating your liberal democratic values altogether. And the two other things that need to be taken under consideration is the importance of technology. Technology is a crucial measurement, a crucial tool for countering terrorism, for countering coronavirus, and public resilience. You need the cooperation, you need the obedience, and you need the resilience of the public together with the private sector, together with the public sector and the government in order to be effective in counterterrorism. Last but not least, international cooperation. Think about the next step in countering coronavirus. I mean, Israel is quite stable. Hopefully, Italy would be stable, or going to be stable, and other countries. And then what? Are you opening your borders? You give the ability for tourists to travel from place to place, to commerce, and so on and so forth. You need to find a way that you have the same leverage, or approximately the same leverage of success of those countries. That can be done only with very tight international cooperation. You see behind me the challenge coin of ICT, the slogan that we use there. It takes a network to beat a network. We talked about terrorism. It's crucial for countering coronavirus. It takes a network to beat the network of the coronavirus.
Thank you, Dr. Ganor. Drawing on this before I go back to Dr. Leoni, what is, given everything that you said, what is your most important recommendation to Western governments right now, given your experience in counterterrorism, meaning countering coronavirus? What is your?
I think it's understanding the overall phenomenon in the way that I explained it. If we take our experience, global experience in counterterrorism, if we understand the dilemmas that counterterrorism bring to the table, we can use our experience and our experience in solving those dilemmas in countering the coronavirus. The question of privacy of the public, the question of lockdown, the question of surveillance on the people which are ill, and so on and so forth. We have a lot of mileage in countering terrorism and dealing with those specific questions. We should use them in countering coronavirus.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Professor Ganor, you've mentioned already the tension between democracy and current terrorism. So we would like to ask you a final question on this issue. So a few days ago, the Italian government paid $4 million to terrorists in Kenya to free a kidnapped Italian NGO worker, Silvia Romano. And this issue, this beautiful news, unfortunately led to a lot of frenzy, a lot of polemical discussions in Italy, particularly coming from right-wing parties. So the obvious question to you here is, do we negotiate with terrorists?
Well, my general answer would be yes. But of course, we need to explain the yes, because there are many restrictions to this yes. I am for negotiating with terrorists under those conditions because this is a tool. It's a tool to learn about them. It's a tool to collect intelligence. It's a tool that might actually serve for a rescue operation. And sometimes it's a tool to solve the crisis in a peaceful way with a low level of price that you pay as an outcome of that. The problem is that we see also in Israel and in other places as well, that government sometimes doesn't know where is the threshold. And they use this negotiation, and at the end of the day, they have a bad deal. They are ready to make many compromises which should not be done to terrorists. In reference to the case that you're talking about in Italy, this health worker, I believe that what we see here is a certain type of a very known phenomenon. This is the Stockholm Syndrome phenomenon, which is the person that was kidnapped fall in love in a way, or identify with, have sympathy towards the kidnapper. This is a way in order to preserve his life. This is some kind of a syndrome that it's typical. We know Patty Hearst, if you remember, in the 70s from California and others. I think that in that specific case, psychologists should work with her, and maybe at the end of the day, they would see that this is just a syndrome that would pass away, or that she really adopt Islam as an outcome of that. If this is a genuine case, maybe she should, in the future, pay back to the country for at least some of the expenses that were spent in order to bring her back home.
Thank you very much, Professor. May I ask you a very final question related to my previous question? Because, we have Italy, like many other countries, we have plenty of NGO workers around the world. So clearly, although I agree with you, we cannot expect the same treatment for everyone, for all of them, I guess. So I wonder whether maybe there needs to be more clarity in terms of NGO mandates and security measures in order to prevent this to happen.
I definitely agree with you. I think that a state like Italy that has so many health workers and tourists and so on and so forth should have a guideline in this regard, what should be done, what shouldn't be done. But I wouldn't exclude the tool of negotiation with a terrorist organization, of the government. It doesn't mean that you need to surrender to any demand of any terrorist organization, but The negotiation is one tool in the toolbox of the government.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ganor. Thank you.
Thank you.